Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us. Here's a live look at Palm Beach State College in Lake Worth. That's in Palm Beach County, where we expect Governor Ron DeSantis and Attorney General James Uthmeier to speak at a news conference any minute now. So we will bring that to you live right here on Fox Local and on YouTube. Meanwhile, we are also monitoring a couple of other things at this hour. You can see we are tracking Hurricane Erin. We've seen the impacts of that storm from the rough surf on the beaches. We are also, we know officials are monitoring possible flooding conditions in North Carolina and some other places further up the coast as well. We are also monitoring the Texas State House of Representatives, where they will soon vote on new redistricting maps for congressional districts, mid-decade redistricting, as officials here in Florida are also talking about. They have been going through a number of amendments, debating those ahead of the final vote on that bill. So that's what we are monitoring at this hour. And again, we are standing by for the start of a news conference in Lake Worth, where the governor and attorney general are expected to speak any minute now. So keep it here on Fox Local. Garrett Weimer here, and if you're just joining us live on Fox Local right now, we are giving you a live look at the Palm Beach State College in Lake Worth, that's in Palm Beach County, where we expect any minute now to hear from Governor Ron DeSantis and Attorney General James Uthmeier. We don't know what exactly they may be talking about, but we are waiting for that news conference to begin. It was scheduled to start at 3 o'clock. We are now nearing 3:30. It still has not begun. We are getting ready to take a quick break here on Fox Local. But we will make sure you don't miss anything from that news conference. So keep it right here. We will get you to the start of that news conference as soon as it begins. Again, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with more coverage as we wait for this news conference to begin in South Florida, awaiting the arrival of Governor DeSantis and Attorney General James Uthmeier. So keep it here on Fox Local, and we will have more in just a couple of minutes.
Well, thank you. Well, it's great to be back in Palm Beach County, and I want to thank Palm Beach State College for hosting us. I think the last time, we went when they did open the SoFi Center, we went to one of those events there, which is really cool what they've been able to do here. And so I want to thank President Parker for having us here. We're also joined by Mike Caruso, who's now a county-wide office holder. So if you guys don't know him, clerk of court. And then we got the Attorney General of Florida, James Uthmeier, is here. So we have an announcement that both the Attorney General and I will talk about. But before I get into that, I do want to make another announcement. So I think, as most people know, we had a terrible thing happen in St. Lucie County, where you had an illegal alien who was driving this big tractor truck and decided to try to do a U-turn where they have the official use only. Those are little gaps in the highway for highway patrol and law enforcement, and it was obviously a total disaster to even try that. You had a car coming that ran into it, and 3 Floridians were killed. This was somebody that was issued that CDL actually in 2 different states, Washington State and in California, and should have never obviously been behind the wheel. Doesn't even speak English. You gotta, if you want to drive, you gotta know the road signs and stuff, and it's just the reality. So it was a really horrible thing. At the time, there was not any eyewitnesses. He didn't speak English. So they got all the facts they could, but then when they got the videotape, they saw. So immediately he fled to California, obviously sanctuary state. He was able to be detained in California, and so today I'm sending Florida's new Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins to California, and tomorrow morning he is going to take possession of this illegal alien, extradite him back to the state of Florida, and we're going to throw the book at him when he gets back here for what he did. So you can count on that. Now, we are here to discuss something that both the Attorney General and I are going to be pursuing in conjunction, hopefully, with the Trump administration, and that involves the count of Florida in the most recent census. I think most people know we were undercounted in that census. In fact, I remember when The first Trump administration was leaving office in January of 2021. I spoke with people at the Commerce Department, and they said Florida's going to get 2 additional seats in Congress as a result of that census, which was basically the 2010 through 2020 population growth. Turns out, new administration takes office. We end up getting 1 seat, state of Florida. Oregon got 1. I think Colorado, it's like we got the same as Oregon over that period of time. And even the Biden administration a couple years later said that there was undercount in Florida, that Florida should have gotten at least 1 more seat in Congress, and that some of these other states, and look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but every state that got shortchanged was a Republican state, and every state that got more was a Democrat state. That's just the truth about how that census was applied. So, you think about it, and I know there's different issues involving the census even apart from that, but the census that was done, and it started under Trump administration, but it was processed and the results were promulgated under Biden. Just with that, if we just take that and applied it properly, Florida would have at least 1 more seat. That's just the truth. So the Attorney General has written a letter to the Census Bureau, the Commerce Department, copying the White House, saying, please fix this remuneration and award Florida what we're entitled to, an extra seat in Congress. And if we get that, that's not only an extra seat in the House of Representatives, we have 28 now, that would also mean an additional vote in the Electoral College when it comes to presidential elections. And so we should have had that in 2024, and 22 for Congress, 24 for both Congress and the Electoral College, and we want this fixed now. We think it's really something that's important. So if that relief is given, then that would obviously force the Florida legislature to have to redraw the maps that we have for U.S. House of Representatives, because we have 28 districts currently. We would presumably have 29. I've had some people tell me they think we'd have 30, but I think 29. So you would have to do that. But that would need to be done, likely within the next 3 to 6 months so that we have enough time to be able to get that done. But we are going to press this issue. Attorney General told me he's going to be willing to go up to Washington and talk to people in the Commerce Department to be able to get this right. I know President Trump has spoken about the need to fix the problems with the census. And let me also say that there's the issue, which I think is important, about, okay, you count people, and then you've got people, especially in like California, who are illegally in the country. Should you be rewarded for that and more seats in Congress because you're a sanctuary jurisdiction? I don't think so. I don't think it's right. So, you count who's ever present, but then when you do congressional apportionment, that should be based on people who are lawfully present in the country. And then if you did that, that would also necessitate different results than what we've had in recent years. And so we're totally supportive of dealing with the issue of not having illegal aliens counted for the purpose of apportionment. That benefits California, it benefits Illinois, New York in ways that it really shouldn't. But that's how it's been done. So we're definitely supportive of that. But you don't even need to do that to give us the extra seat that we should have had starting in the 2022 election. So that's the first thing, and we're going to keep on this. We're going to work with Commerce. I had spoken with folks back in the day when this happened. I was like, can we sue over this? And they're like, well, we don't really, how do you get in? And we didn't know what the basis would be. We knew we were entitled, but you got to prove it. You got to have the legal theory, all this stuff. And we were not going to get any help at the time, of course, from the Biden administration. Well, now Biden administration has since had to acknowledge that there was an undercount. And I know the Trump administration is of the same mind. So we're in a position now where I think we may be able to get positive relief. The other issue that is going to be significant, that's going to have a bearing on Florida's congressional districts, is the idea of race-based districts. So the U.S. Supreme Court has accepted a case. It's going to be argued in October, basically asking the question about whether is it appropriate to use race when you're drawing districts. So the current iteration of the Voting Rights Act has been interpreted to mean that if you have a majority-minority district, that district has to be kept into a similar configuration such that the majority can elect a candidate of their choice, which basically, it doesn't necessarily mean, if you elected that district elected a Republican, they would say that that's a bad district. It basically means that district has to elect a Democrat. That's the way this has been interpreted over the years. We have at least one in our congressional map that is configured strangely to be able to comply with that interpretation of the Voting Rights Act. People are now bringing a challenge saying, you know what, Voting Rights Act means you show up to vote. If you're a lawful citizen, you get to vote. They can't play games with you. They can't make one person go in with nothing and then someone, because they're a different color, have to be able to recite the Odyssey from memory. Otherwise, they fail the literacy test. All that stuff is done. Like, that is not something that's appropriate, but that's an individual's voter's right to go in and cast a vote if you're a citizen of this country, and that obviously should apply regardless of race. But are we saying that you have to draw these strange districts to be able to manufacture a certain number of folks of certain race or not race in one district? That is using race to draw the districts in ways that I think some people, I do, interpret the 14th Amendment to not allow. So that is going to be a huge issue in front of the Supreme Court. I think because they're hearing it this early in the session, that they likely are going to render a decision on this perhaps by the end of the year, the beginning of next year. Our primary is a year away, so we have time to be able to digest those changes. But if that decision were to come down and to say that those districts are problematic, Florida would be forced with that as well, even if we didn't get the extra seat, to go in and do a new map. And as you remember, well, some may remember, I had to veto the Florida Republican legislature. I had to veto their map last time because they drew this 200-mile district from Tallahassee to Jacksonville, this little squiggly district across the northern tip of Florida, and it was purely to manufacture a certain racial composition. It was not a VRA district, though. This was them doing that apart from that. And I said, that's not constitutional. Like, regardless, however you think the VRA should be interpreted, if it's a VRA district, federal law, fine, you deal with that. But this was not. No one was even claiming it was. And so I said, I'm not going to sign that. And we vetoed the map. We had to fight them on other stuff, but we got a map in. And it ended up going to federal court and the Florida Supreme Court. And it's been upheld every time people have sued over it, because we knew we were right. But that was a really important decision to be able to do that. So we've done that. Here, this could be something that would require us to do even more. And we're going to be ready and willing and able to do it. Now, apart from what happens with the Commerce Department and the Census Bureau, apart from what happens with the U.S. Supreme Court and how they interpret Section 2 of the VRA, we do have a situation in Florida where, based on the recent Florida Supreme Court decision, there may be things in the map that we are going to have to, well, the legislature would have to address. We're going through it. I know people are looking at it, but there's definitely some decisions that were made by the legislature last time, particularly in southern Florida, that may not comport with the court's recent decision upholding the northern part of Florida with the part of the map that was challenged. So that obviously is a basis to go in and do this thing fresh. And the other thing I would point out is, if you look at when this census was completed, the counting, I think, stopped in April of 2020. I mean, just think about what it was like in Palm Beach then compared to now. I mean, like, Florida has been the place where people have escaped to from all, and just keep in mind, I'm not recruiting people to move here. Some governors will go around the country, please move to our state, please. I'm not doing that, because honestly, we've got a lot of people. We've got great people. I figured out, like, during COVID, like, I didn't need to go on these trips to recruit, businesses from New York. They were calling me, asking me to come down. Like, you guys can come if you want. It was fine. So I'm not one of those guys that's like begging people, to move here at all. because I understand, like, look, there's some benefits to that. I mean, some of the people have moved in this area, have good income. They don't really use services. They contribute and all that stuff. So I'm not saying it's bad, but there obviously is challenges with traffic. There's challenges with building new schools and all this stuff. So the bottom line is, we just try to do a good job. People can vote with their feet how they want to. And the reality is, since that April of 2020, Florida has been the #1 state that people have sought to move to in the entire United States of America. And so when I got elected governor, I think we had about 21 million people. Now we're almost 23.5 million people in the state of Florida. But our current congressional districts are reflective of that reality from 2019, the beginning of 2020. So you have some districts that have not reflected the population change that's happened. So some districts you have a lot of votes, some you don't have as much votes. And so that is another basis to go back in and look and say, okay, we want equal representation. These districts should be the same. A congressman in some parts of Florida can get elected with like a fraction of the votes that some of these congressmen, are getting 250,000 votes. Some of the others are getting like less than 200,000 votes. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that's odd when you have that. And it's not just, there's overall way more votes in some districts than the others. So we've seen that. And part of it is because what's happened in Florida has really been unprecedented. We've had really significant growth and migration, and our congressional map should reflect that. So this is something that we are going to have to address as a state. I've spoken with some folks in the Florida legislature, and I think that there's broad acknowledgement that this is something that is going to happen. We do have some things that will happen between now and the spring that will inform exactly how we're supposed to do this, particularly if we get another seat or if the Supreme Court says that the racial-based districts are unconstitutional. That we would have no choice as a state but to go in and do a new congressional map. But this is something that's kind of stuck in my craw for a number of years, because I remember telling everybody we were going to get 2 seats in the last census. And then when they came out with it, we only got 1, and I was looking around, and I'm like, they told me Rhode Island was going to do. No, we only got 1. So there's all these questions, and so I've been frustrated with it. We were not going to get anywhere, I think, under the Biden administration. And I know the president has personally spoken about the need to get the census right. So we have an opportunity to do that and to basically give Floridians what they're entitled to, which is fair representation. So I want to thank the Attorney General for taking the lead on this and working with the Trump administration. This is time sensitive, though. I mean, Florida, we have more time than most because our primary is not for about a year away. And we have filing that probably can get pushed to June for congressional if we need to, like the state offices. So we do have some time. But it's certainly, if they're going to go back and fix the census, I mean, that would be something that they would need to act on as soon as possible. So hopefully Florida can play a role in getting this right, not just for the people of our state, but for the United States. James?
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's clear that there's been, for a long time now, a deep state effort to manipulate the census and shift electoral power to blue states, to sanctuary states. And as you see, a lot of Democrat leaders engaging in hysteria over the deportation of people that are here illegally, many of these people, who have committed very heinous crimes, it's clear that they are freaking out because they realize the jig is up. They had a deep-seated plan. They wanted to open the border, flood these people in, spread them into sanctuary communities, and ultimately get greater disproportionate electoral power because of it. And think about it. Somebody that is not here as a lawful citizen doesn't have the right to vote. Yet on election night, when the Electoral College, the electoral votes are distributed, states like California do disproportionately well. It's estimated, and we don't know the total number of people here in this country illegally, but it's estimated that at least 20 to 30 congressional seats, electoral votes, perhaps would shift if we were truly apportioning based on lawful U.S. citizens. So we applaud President Trump and the administration for recognizing this problem, this challenge to our Constitution, this challenge to true electoral representation in this country. We're certainly going to do everything we can to help them get it right. Now, as the governor said, we in Florida, we have our own exacerbated problem. And I saw it happen firsthand. I was appointed to be a senior advisor to the Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross, a local resident here, in the first administration, and the Commerce Department oversees the Census Bureau. So as the tabulations were beginning, as the numbers were coming in, it was always projected Florida would get 2 seats. That's certainly what I thought was going to happen, maybe even 3, given the population growth we were seeing even before COVID and the rise of the Free State. And yet, sure enough, Biden administration comes in, there are significant delays, there are problems, and it ultimately comes out Florida only gets 1 seat. Since then, in after-action reports, the Census Bureau has publicly admitted that they believe Florida was undercounted by an estimate of at least 700,000 people. We only needed, according to the earlier data, we only needed about 100-something thousand to get that extra seat. So the Census Bureau themselves, the very bureaucrats that cause these problems, have admitted that Florida should have had more representation. Florida citizens deserve the adequate representation in Congress. They deserve the adequate representation in the Electoral College that makes such important decisions for the leadership of our country. Florida citizens deserve the fair and adequate federal funding to come to this state and ensure that we have the resources needed to meet the needs of our population. So the Office of Attorney General will certainly be pursuing any remedy necessary to fix this problem. Obviously, we'd love to do it before the midterms next year, before voters go and vote. And we otherwise look forward to working with the Trump administration on fixing a larger midterm census to get it right for the country and our citizens. You guys deserve it. So we'll be fighting the good fight. I'll be helping the governor in this regard, and look forward to hopefully seeing some good results. Thank you.
One thing that's important to point out is Florida, I vetoed the map last time. It did have unconstitutional racial gerrymandering. We did a map, and people were howling about it because the reality is, we did it on constitutional grounds, but they didn't like the fact that that gerrymandered district would have likely been a Democrat, and then that was taken away. And so they were crying foul on that. Florida's map has compact districts. It's one of the most compact maps in the country. The legislature is not allowed to draw the Illinois-style snake districts, which are a joke. They're not allowed to do that. So the map that Florida has compact districts. It's done in a way that makes a lot of sense. And the reality is if you look at like California, they're doing all this dog and pony show there now, saying, oh, Texas, we've got to combat Texas. California is one of the worst gerrymandered maps there is. What they did, this is how they do. They're like, no, we're going to do an independent commission. So they do a commission. The problem is, it's like if you truly were independent, it's like you would be immune to any type of partisan pressures. But that commission is comprised of liberal Democrats, liberal independents, and very liberal Republicans. I think one of the Republicans is from Berkeley, like not exactly a hotbed of Reagan conservatism. It is what it is. So they hotwired that independent commission to produce a map that was very much gerrymandered and was not something that was fair to Republicans even at that time. Now they're saying they want to do even more by doing whatever they're talking about doing now. So don't buy this notion that if someone has a commission, that somehow means it is immune from this type of partisan pressures. The California one was a left-wing commission. That's just the reality. That's what they produced. That's what they were supposed to do based on who appointed those folks to that commission. And so I just think it's better to just have the legislature do it. And if you don't like it, you can vote them out. You put some commission in, like California, and then stack it if you don't like that as a voter, those people will never appear on your ballot. But that's exactly what they did there, and they've done it in other states as well. And then Illinois, if you look at Illinois, so Illinois, like if Chicago wasn't in Illinois, it would be a red state. There's some dots blue, but like most of it is red outside of Illinois. So if you drew compact districts, you'd have probably 6 in the Chicago that would be like 90-10 Dem, right? But then all the other ones would probably be Republican districts, and they didn't want that. So what they do is they go into the city of Chicago, they find enough Dems, and they draw a map out to the burbs and the rural to do that, so they know a Dem can win. Then they go to the next part of the city. They draw it out with the rural and all that. So just look up their map on Google Maps and Google Image, and it'll come up, and you can see it. And it's a joke. And I just find it funny that Texas, whatever they, I don't know what the status is. I know they were trying. These Democrats flee, and and a lot of the media is like acting like Texas is like so out of bounds. I never heard anything about Illinois. Like it was almost like they didn't care about Illinois. You even have the governor of Illinois. He's sheltering these Texas Democrats who are fleeing. First of all, you should be there doing your job, not running and hiding. But they're fleeing to Illinois to protest gerrymandering. You're going to Illinois to protest gerrymandering? I mean, it's just ridiculous. So Florida, what we did, we were attacked at the time. The reality is people can pull up, that map and see, how it was done. So this is going to be something, we are going to have to address this in one form or another. We will do that. But I do think that there's going to be things that are going to happen throughout the balance of this year and the beginning of next year. Maybe get a tweak to the census, Supreme Court rule on racial gerrymandering. And then obviously we've got the basis that we're looking through based on the Florida Supreme Court's decision about if there are any vulnerabilities on our current map, and then just accounting for the reality that Florida has had a big population shift, and it hasn't been uniform throughout the state. Broward, I don't think they've had net population gain. You have some other places. I mean, Palm Beach has had net gain. You've had other parts of the state definitely net gain, but there's some that boomed, some that were fine. No one did bad. But it isn't uniform the way it's happened. So the map should reflect that. We want to make sure everybody's vote counts. So stay tuned on that. But this letter has gone out. James is going to be working with Commerce and working with the Trump administration on this. And hopefully we're able to get to a positive resolution for the state of Florida. Okay, we got any questions? Yes.
Yes, Governor Dave Bowman, WPTV. You had mentioned racially drawn districts, and you said at least one in our state. Is that the one represented near here by?
Yeah, so if you look at the map, there's one that has almost like claws that go out. It's the most irregular shaped district on Florida's map. It's not really what the legislature is supposed to draw pursuant to the Florida Constitution, but the reason why they were able to do it is to ensure, at least on the surface, compliance, with the VRA Section 2. Like I said, the case in the Supreme Court is, well, wait a minute, voting rights means you show up, I think you got to show a picture ID like we do in Florida. You got to be a citizen, all that. But, you have a right to vote if you're eligible. And that shouldn't be encumbered. That, to me, is what voting rights are. It's not to try to do these somersaults on a congressional map to try to engineer, something based on characteristics that I don't think really speak to people's, character or ideas. But yeah, that would be the one that was the most irregularly shaped. That if the U.S. Supreme Court said that you can't do that, you would be forced to redraw that one 100%.
Than if an independent commission appointed with a lot of input, obviously from you and the Republican majority, would that be a better solution than having a state legislature?
It would be a much less accountable solution. You have as voters, you can hold the legislature accountable. Every 2 years, you get to go and hold them accountable. if you don't like what they're doing. And that ultimately is the protection that you have as citizens to be able to basically, if you don't like what's going on, like they say, you can throw the bums out anytime you want. But I would also just point to the Florida legislature. And look, I had folks in my office that were, because, you know, we had a disagreement on the map. So they were drawing, look at Florida's map. Look at the compactness of the districts. It was well done. It just was. And I think you would see something similar. Florida's Constitution says you got to have compact. You got to try to follow boundaries, geographical boundaries, municipal, the best you can to make it a sensible district. And I think the map that we have now does that. Now, the people at the time, particularly, you know, the other party, they didn't like it because we did dismantle that gerrymandered district. And it did cause a change in the partisan representation for the state in terms of our whole delegation, but that wasn't the intent of it. That was an effect of it because we were abiding by the Constitution.
Hi, Rachel Williams with WTBF on 25 News. My question is going back to your first point about the truck driver from last week. Can you detail how state troopers were able to determine that same entered the U.S. illegally?
Well, it wasn't the state troopers that did it. It was in conjunction with federal authorities. So the feds were able to provide pretty much the whole dossier on this guy. Very soon as the video leaked and then we knew that there was a crime that was committed, they were able to get that information in short order. So illegally entered the country in 2018, applied for work authorization in the fall of 2020, was rejected. That was under Trump 45. Reapplied for work authorization in 2021 under Biden and was granted the work authorization. Eventually receives a CDL, a commercial driver's license from Washington State, which is a sanctuary state, and then took that license and applied for a similar license in California. And so the California license was granted at least in part on the fact that he had a CDL in Washington State. So I think and then when he was identified after the video came out, he was detained. The feds, this happened within the last few days, you know, they conducted a language test on him. You know, you're supposed to be reading these signs. You're supposed to know what the hell you're doing. That's true if you're driving a little VW Bug, much less a tractor trailer. And yet this guy, he abysmally failed the English test. Like not even close. Like not even broken English. Like this guy did not know English, and yet somehow he was given a CDL by Washington and a CDL by the state of California. And that should not have happened. That is wrong that happened. So you have a real serious issue and a breakdown here. But I would say part of the problem, and I mentioned this yesterday, this guy came from India, right? He comes through the southern border illegally. He gets caught and he claims asylum. That is not what asylum is for. First of all, if he was really being persecuted in India, how many countries did he pass through where he could have claimed this? You don't just get to come halfway around the world and use that as a card to get it. So then he claims asylum, but we have this totally screwy system where he's then given a court date, then it's postponed, then this. So it's like if you come illegally and you give a bogus asylum claim under how the law's been applied, at least up until President Trump took office in January, you're basically giving yourself years in this country. That is not a disincentive to come illegally. That's not a disincentive not to overstay visa. That's not so you had that was going on, and I'm just thinking to myself, it's like, well, wait a minute. We all know this is a problem. You can't have a situation in which a President Biden can open the border, millions and millions come in, and then a President Trump's trying to rectify that. And it's basically you got to jump through like 36 different bureaucratic hula hoops just to be able to return somebody to their home country. So it's kind of heads they win, tails we lose, the way it's set up right now. And so my question is, we have a Republican Congress. All these guys, I've watched them for years. They all run, and when they're running for election, oh, I'm so tough on border immigration, no illegal, all that. Then they get in there, and what do they do about it? Have they passed legislation? Have they sought legislation to clean up the mess? Have they passed legislation to be able to get this done so that we don't have these problems? No. They've been in for how many months? They haven't even attempted it that I've seen. What about sanctuary states? Now, we're not a sanctuary state in Florida. We banned sanctuary cities my first year. We've got very strong policies, and it's honestly, it benefits citizens in Florida to have those strong policies. But why are they still funding sanctuary states? Why are they still funding sanctuary cities? Why doesn't Congress use the power of the purse and say, your funding is contingent upon following federal law with respect to immigration? You can't be a sanctuary jurisdiction. You can't, California, they've probably done 1 million driver's licenses to illegal aliens in the past decade. Now, Florida law, we don't recognize that license in Florida. We don't issue driver's license for people who are here illegally. We don't let local governments do ID cards because, some of the local governments would want to get involved in that. We ban that. We don't even let the NGOs do it because we know they're trying to generate a system where people can get benefits, vote, whatever, when they're not entitled to it. So we've done it right. But how is it that these sanctuary jurisdictions are able to get away with it? And I think they get away with it because Congress, they're basically on the sidelines. It's like they just kind of sit in the cheap seats and watch everything unfold without actually using their constitutional authority to fix these problems. So this was avoidable. This should have never happened. There were obviously major screw-ups by Washington State and California. Well, I shouldn't even say that because I think that's their policy to be able to do that. So those are misguided policies. But the bureaucratic morass that happens when somebody will come in and claim asylum, really is a farce. I'm not sure. I didn't draw the current map. I don't know whose district is whose. And quite frankly, even though I wasn't involved in drawing it, I said I was going to veto the one and that we had to do another. The guys that do draw the maps, they don't do it based on who the incumbent is. They basically do it based on, what makes sense in terms of geographic. So, we had some incumbents that were complaining last time, and they were like, oh, you're trying to go after this. No, no one was gone after. It had no impact on anything. Now, I will say, clearly, if the VRA is found to be, the application of the VRA is found to be unconstitutional of the race-based district, that district here will definitely change. So that we will be mandated to do it. And my sense is that would probably have spillover effects for a lot of places in southern Florida. I think if you look at the map now, probably north of I-4, I think is a pretty sound map. I don't think that there's really any basis. I think as you get into central, but particularly southeast Florida, there starts to become questions, voting VRA questions, but also some lingering questions from the first round of maps that the Florida Supreme Court has now been able to opine on that you could potentially look to see. And then I think if there are any changes made, one of the things that these guys are going to have to look at is, because you can draw a line in this part of the town or that part of, at some point you got to make decisions. And I think those decisions should be informed by the population changes and how all that's happened so that people get as fair and as equal of representation as possible. But if you have to change one, then, there's going to be a lot of other districts that could potentially be implicated. But I don't know if there's a constitutional defect with Moskowitz. I don't know there. I know we have, I think, 2 VRA districts. Is it 2? Do you know, or is it just with the one? Okay, at least 2. I think one of them is pretty compact, so I don't know that would necessarily be a problem per se, as long as there was a non-racial justification for it. I do think the one here in Palm Beach that has the arms that kind of go out and try to snag more voters that way, I think that's got some problems. And I think almost certainly if the VRA is interpreted to say that you can't use race in that way, then that district will have to be redrawn 100%. So that's a good question. How endemic is this problem about not being able to speak English and then getting a CDL? I can tell you in Florida, you have to speak English. So anyone that is able to obtain a CDL, without doing that is getting it unlawfully. We require that. I think most states do. I think probably federal law requires them to be able to do it. So I don't know the answer to your question writ large overall. I know for us, we've been very clear. You have to do it. We're also making sure, like, hey, is there anything more we need to do to make sure that that's honored? My sense is it's been honored in Florida, but clearly this guy would not have passed the test in Washington or California based on the test that was just done on him by the federal immigration officials. It would not have happened. So he clearly never demonstrated proficiency in English. And, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this when you're driving on the road. I mean, we put our own citizens through just to be able to get a normal driver's license. You got to know what you're doing. And, look, Florida, we got enough problem with some of our drivers. I mean, it's like, let's just be honest here. Do we really need to have more? We really want people who are not eligible to be in this country, don't speak English, trying to maneuver a tractor trailer like this? Like, no, I don't think that that's the right thing to do. So we're going to look more deeply into what happened in Washington State, what happened in California, because I would imagine, I don't think, well, knowing those states, you never know, but I think it would be hard for them to actually put on paper, you don't have to speak English to drive these heavy vehicles in the United States. I think it would be hard for them to get away with that, and I don't know that they've actually put that on paper. If they did, that's a huge scandal. But if they say you have to do English and then just aren't enforcing it, that's another problem too. And I think there should be accountability for it. And I said, as soon as we got, the facts on this, which, I know the video came out, I think over the weekend or Friday or something. And I commented on Monday because I wanted to get as much facts as I could. I didn't want to just pop off. I wanted to know what we were dealing with. But I said, we're going to hold this guy accountable, 100% criminal charges, and he's going to be in prison for a long time. But we also got to look at the company. How is he doing? The company put him in there. Did the company not look to see whether he could speak English? I mean, how do you hire somebody? Hey, how are you going to drive the no English? Like, no, you have got to speak English. And there had to be a process where you were able to say, and this guy didn't speak English. So that's a huge problem with the company. So we're looking through that and seeing. And then we're also looking at the conduct of these other states to see, what recourse there's. It's harder when you're talking about other states. It just is, legally and constitutionally. But, how is it fair that, like Florida, we're doing the right thing? We've enacted the safe policies. We've enacted policies that discourage illegal immigration, not to encourage it. California does the opposite. Washington State, sanctuary state, they are inviting people to come illegally to their state. And, you can say, well, that's the policies they've chosen, but those policies spill over to our states. And that's the problem, I think, that you have. And that's why I think Congress, they need to get with the program here, and they need to start enacting some policies to protect states like Florida from the excesses of the sanctuary states throughout these United States. Okay, thanks, everybody. God bless.
Governor Ron DeSantis ramping up a news conference in Lake Worth, Florida, where he was speaking alongside the Attorney General at Palm Beach State College, talking about a couple of things, and we will run through one of them here now and then go into one in just a minute, making an announcement about the census and congressional apportionment. So talking about how Florida was undercounted in the 2020 census, something that the Commerce Department has essentially admitted, they said, basically saying that Florida should have gotten at least one more seat when it came to the congressional apportionment following the 2020 census. Florida currently has 28 congressional seats. They believe Florida should at least have 29 from that census several years ago, and that was before really an even larger influx into the state. The news today is that the Attorney General has sent a letter to the Commerce Department, copying on a number of others as well, including the White House, asking for that to be fixed. The governor says, we want this fixed now. They essentially want the correct counting that they believe Florida is due. They said that would essentially force a redraw of the congressional district maps here in the state of Florida. And they said this is a process that certainly has a deadline. something that they say needs to be done in the next 3 to 6 months. And they also are echoing statements from the president earlier this month when he talked about wanting another census conducted, that they don't want illegal immigrants counted as part of that congressional apportionment and that. So we're going to take a quick break here on Fox 35 News Plus, but we'll be right back after this.
You're watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. It is time for your top 4 at 4, and this is where we break down 4 of the big stories that we are tracking in the Fox 35 newsroom this afternoon. And a quick rundown for you of our top stories. One of them being an update in the case of the illegal immigrant who is now charged with 3 counts of vehicular manslaughter in connection with a deadly crash that happened when officials say he tried to make an illegal U-turn on the Florida Turnpike in St. Lucie County. That crash killed 3 people. We just learned in the last little bit from Governor DeSantis that the Lieutenant Governor, Jay Collins, is on his way to California to pick up that suspect and bring him back to Florida to face those charges.
Today, I'm sending Florida's new Lieutenant Governor, Jay Collins, to California. And tomorrow morning, he is going to take possession of this illegal alien, extradite him back to the state of Florida, and we're going to throw the book at him when he gets back here for what he did. So you can count on that.
So a breaking update there this afternoon. Now, the top story in our top 4 at 4. A 4-year-old child hurt in a shooting in Apopka. We are still working to learn some new details about this. This happened yesterday evening on North Park Avenue and East Virgil Street. According to Orange County deputies, 2 people were shooting at each other, and during that shooting, a 4-year-old child was hit. They were taken to the hospital. We don't know anything else about this right now, but we're working to learn more details. Our second story, Robin Severance Lopez in court this afternoon. She is the estranged wife of the suspended Osceola County Sheriff Marcos Lopez. She is among several people facing charges in connection with an alleged illegal gambling ring that ended up removing the Osceola County Sheriff from office. She had asked a judge to get rid of her GPS ankle monitor because of some physical reasons and also some financial reasons. The judge sided with her and granted that motion, so she will no longer have to wear that GPS ankle monitor, but she will have to make every appearance in court. Story number 3, and that is we're learning more about this the suspect in the Seminole County trail attack. In fact, we have learned that this man, Patrick Gamache, who is now charged in that case, was also just recently let out of jail for a case out of South Florida. Fox 35's Randy Hildreth has been following up on this, and we'll have more details coming up in just a little bit. And a story going viral showing an outburst at MCO as a woman caught on video arguing with an employee of Southwest, seen punching computers, kicking that worker as well. Still trying to learn more information about this as well, but that video going viral, and we've got the details right now on fox35orlando.com. The big story weather-wise, and that is Hurricane Erin, as we are tracking the impacts of that as it continues to move through the Atlantic. And joining me live now is Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Noah Berggren. And Noah, we appreciate you joining us. And we know that our beaches have been feeling some of the impacts from Erin, and we've been dealing with some of those afternoon showers as well over the last little bit here in our area.
Yeah, that's right, Garrett. And those showers and storms are influenced by Erin that is pulling away to our east. The rain chances today kind of low. Tomorrow they're on the lower side, but they really ramp up on Friday. I think Friday and Saturday particularly will have a lot of storms, more than we've had in probably quite a while, with the majority of people actually seeing rain Friday and Saturday. But the story at our beaches is the surf. You look up here in Daytona, there's very little beach. If you're here visiting, going to Daytona for the weekend for the summer race, the 400, on Saturday, there's not a lot of beach to plop a chair on, especially high tides coming up about 6:30 tonight at Daytona. Times of low tide, yeah, there's some beach that'll be there, but it's really poor swimming weather. I was there yesterday. You go up not even knee deep and you can get pulled out. There's a lot of rip currents. It's very dangerous to be swimming. Surfers, it's a different story if you're a veteran surfer, but it's really rough on the beaches. Elsewhere, things are just calm out there now, but you can see the Daytona camera. It's really rocking the surf out there. So big surf today, rip currents through Friday, but the surf is peaking today with 7 to 10 footers, a couple swells up to 12 feet. Typical late August temps through the end of the month, nothing really to write home about in terms of much hotter or much cooler than normal temps, and the higher storm chances will be a headline later this week. All right, so there's the outermost bands of Hurricane Erin that are offshore. We have a couple of storms influencing this flow moving north to south. Not a lot out there tonight. Nothing will be severe, but there's Erin really has expanded in size. This thing is monstrous. The core is here, but the cloud canopy extends hundreds of miles in either direction, and the radius of hurricane force winds is unusually far from the center. You can see a small eye of the storm there popping out, but the hurricane is moving north. There are tropical storm warnings in effect for the Outer Banks in North Carolina over the next couple of days. There's the water vapor imagery. You can see the storm pulling to the north of Vermont Drive. Things are sunny there now. Where it rained in downtown, it's down to 78. Where it hasn't rained, it's still 94 in Clearmont, 82 in Cocoa Beach, 86 in DeLand. The heat index is still up there, but not really that significant for the time of year, just near 100. So over the next couple of days, the heat index about 103 to 106, but that is typical for late August. Temperatures tomorrow, something into the mid-90s, it looks like. There's the latest on Erin. 110-mile-an-hour storm just below Category 3 status. Here's the archived path. You can see forecast was correct from 10 days ago that this would not be a Florida landfall. Moving due north at 13. Pressure is pretty far down. Remember, lower pressure, stronger storm. The pressure about 943 millibars out there for this evening. And the eye of the storm will continue to push off to the northeast. And there will be a storm surge. Parts of the Carolinas, the 2 to 4 foot storm surge expected tomorrow as Erin goes on by. So for us, Garrett, it looks like this. A couple of storms tomorrow, but much higher storm coverage Friday. If you've got dinner or outdoor plans for a late lunch, anything from mid-afternoon through the mid-evening Friday, we'll all see when we get there. You can trust me, there will be a lot of storms. We've had really sporadic stuff of late Friday. Most people will get some action afternoon and evening. So take that into your plans. I'm not saying cancel them, but just know that the majority of us, not the minority, will get rain and storms Friday, Saturday. A couple of them could be severe storm warnings Friday for pockets of strong wind or hail. We'll keep an eye on that. But again, notice the temperatures Nothing really changing much over the next week. The only change for next week, the rain chances is they'll come down a little bit by the middle of next week. So Aaron's pulling away, Garrett, but the big story for at least the next several days, even though the wave heights will come down, the rip current threat's going to stay pretty high heading into the upcoming weekend.
Yeah, still certainly a danger and a risk there. So Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Noah Berger, and we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, sir.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
You're watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon. Give you a live look inside the Johnson Space Center in Houston right now, where we are hearing from the Crew 10 astronauts. They are talking about their science mission aboard the ISS after spending nearly 5 months in space, 146 days. To be exact, they traveled close to 63 million miles, completing 2,400 orbits around Earth. And while they were up there, did about hundreds of science experiments and some technology demonstrations as well. So we are hearing from these astronauts. They got back to Earth on August 9th, so a little over a couple of weeks ago. And we are hearing from Anne McClain, Nicole Ayers. Both of them are NASA astronauts. And we are also hearing from a Japanese astronaut from JAXA, who is also part of that Crew 10. So let's go ahead and listen in live from Houston.
Lenses that we can change out and use as required. So we didn't bring our own cameras up. We use the ones that are on board. And as Anne mentioned, you know, the cargo vehicles, that's part of the manifest and how we manage cameras and photography for science and Earth observations and disaster relief. And so, you know, that was, yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do up there. We were super fortunate. We had a month with Don Pettit, and he gave a great handover. I basically just followed Don around for about a month and took notes. And he was kind enough to teach me everything he knows about photography, and so he really helped me. And then as Don left, then the rest of us got really into photography as well. And so I think that just our ability to share all of that photography with the world has gotten better. And so I don't know that we're necessarily taking more pictures, but we're definitely sharing and telling the story of what we can see from the ISS. You know, we have such a unique vantage point, looking down on Earth and looking down on weather systems, the aurora, different thunderstorms, different types of natural disasters, landslides, fires, all sorts of things. And we can really help inform how we do disaster relief. We can help inform, how thunderstorms interact with the atmosphere just based on photography. And so, I felt a really deep sense of duty to just share our view with the world while we were up there. And I think that's innate in every single one of us, I think. And so there are plenty of cameras up there, plenty of lenses. Don Pettit did an amazing amount of work to get our photography to where it is, and then to share that knowledge that we can then pass on to future crews as well.
Okay, great. Anne, anything to add?
She nailed it. Yeah, I think photography was really fun, and I think it's one of the ways that we can communicate just how magic it is. I think everybody on Earth right now, when you can give them a perspective of where we are, the scale of where we are, both in how big our Earth is, but also how small it is and how we're really all in it together. I think if we can give people those moments, and I know we rely on media, like you all here, to tell that story, because I think that's an important story to tell. So we can hand you the pictures, but if you guys can share those far and wide, it'd be great.
Definitely. Okay, before we hop back into our phone bridge, I just want to remind everyone who is dialed in to press *1 to jump into our question queue and *2 to take yourself back out. And with that, I will pass it over to Robert Perlman with Collect Space.
Hi, Rob Perlman with Collect Space. A request and a question. First, a number of our readers asked if there were any clear views of your zero-G indicator, the origami crane. If you took photos of Droog while on station, or if you can take photographs of it now on the ground, could you share those on social media? And then the question, sort of a follow-up to the last one, to Nicole, is about the Sprite, or rather the gigantic jet that you caught while photographing lightning storms. Was that something you saw happen live through the viewfinder, or was it while reviewing a time-lapse sequence? And if live, can you set the scene? Did you immediately recognize what you were seeing? Did you call over your other crewmates? What was that moment like?
Yeah, we definitely have pictures of Droog, so we will share that for sure. Yeah, I can't believe we haven't done that already. Yeah. So yeah, that's an easy one. Yes, of course we will do that. Droog spent the entire mission with us up there, and he kind of hung out in the lab with us, so you could float by him every day. And yeah, so this was just another technique and another skill that I learned from Don. You have to, taking great pictures is about planning and timing and execution. And so, you get a feel for where the largest thunderstorms are, you do the research, and you kind of pay attention to weather systems. And so I knew that there was going to be a pretty big weather system in that area. I knew it was going to be a great pass over, Mexico and the U.S., and wanted to get some really great pictures at night. Nighttime photography became one of my favorite things, but then also the thunderstorms are the most brilliant there as well. So you have to pay attention to the weather systems, know where the higher likelihood of seeing the transient luminous events are, and then setting the camera up. So I set the camera up and started a time lapse, and then I think I had to go do like a science experiment or some other maintenance task that day. So I set an alarm on my iPad, ran over, got the time lapse all set up the way that I wanted it to, and then started it. And then later that day was reviewing the pictures. And we have a shared folder on board the International Space Station that we named Holy Wow. And I was like, I got a Holy Wow picture. And so actually the Axiom 4 crew was there as well, so there were 8 of us crowded around a laptop looking at this picture, and I knew it was a great picture, but I had no idea how phenomenal that picture was. I had caught a couple of Sprites and a couple of Blue Jets and things like that, and every time you're just more fascinated and more inspired to try to capture these things and really see how thunderstorms can interact with the atmosphere hundreds of kilometers above Earth. And again, it's a unique view that we only have. So I actually figured out that if you pay enough attention, you can play the time lapse back, and you can kind of see a bright flash. And so that's kind of that informs which of the 2,000 pictures the chunk of 2,000 pictures that I'm gonna go look at and find the picture that caught the Sprite. So it's something that you can't see with the naked eye, and so it's only in post-processing and review that you can actually find those pictures.
All right, we have another question in the room. Go ahead.
Richard Two with the Post newspaper. A question for all of you. Out of the myriad of experiments that you conducted, both technologically speaking and medical, which ones, I guess, maybe resonated the most with you and maybe was the most meaningful to each of you?
I'll jump in. I've talked about it before, but I think one of the really cool things was the protein crystals, and part of it was because my last mission, it was kind of early on determining whether we could grow protein crystals on orbit. And then if you fast forward 6 years, we are growing lots of protein crystals on orbit and bringing them back to scientists who can use it. And one of the researchers told me this has accelerated Parkinson's research by years. And Keytruda, the drug Keytruda, this was another beneficiary of it, the space station research. And, you know, when you have friends and family who are impacted by cancer and they use Keytruda and you're going, holy cow, this would not have been possible 5 years ago. This treatment would not have been possible if you had been diagnosed 5 years ago. All of a sudden you get goosebumps and you're like, man, it's a really good thing that we have space station. So those two really stick out to me as pretty big underlines for the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on that, you know, the ring shear drop experiment that I explained earlier has very similar effects and very similar positive influence on both Earth and as we venture out into the universe. Then one of the other ones resonated for me because my alma mater had a part in it. So the Air Force Academy was working with rhodium and looking at tomato plants and how they react under microgravity in different areas of radiation. So they actually flew on the FROM mission as well to see, you know, higher up into the outside of the atmosphere what that radiation difference looks like on plants. And, you know, it's also important to look at plants and food as we continue to grow our distance that we move away from the Earth. You know, resupply is going to be a huge problem that we have to solve along with food and water and reclamation. And so it's a small part of how we're going to get onto Mars eventually.
One of my favorite experiments is called the ELF, electrostatic levitation furnace. And there are three reasons I like it. Because the first one is the Japanese experiment. And the second one is I majored in materials science in my university. And the third one is so my first flight was in 2016, and I worked on the first initial checkout of that experiment. And it's kind of still working, and it had a lot of minor or major updates. So it's upgraded until now. And so I was really looking forward to working on that experiment again this time. And it was such a cool experiment that we can levitate a sample by using an electrostatic force. So instead of building a furnace with a heavy metal, and we can use a laser to heat it up until like 2,000 or 3,000 degrees Celsius to get a characteristics data at such high temperature. So it was very, very cool experiment that could be super beneficial to produce any kind of new materials on the ground.
This news conference continuing in Houston at the Johnson Space Center as we hear from the astronauts aboard Crew 10. Who are now back home after spending nearly 5 months on the International Space Station. We're going to take a quick break here on Fox 35 News Plus, but we'll be right back.
watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. I want to get you live inside the Texas House of Representatives. This debate has been going on for hours today over HB 4. It's the redistricting, the new redistricting maps that have been at the center of so much controversy. We know that Texas Democrats left the state for a while to prevent a vote on it. They are back. There is a quorum. The House has been in session today, and they have gone through a number of amendments. They are now debating the bill. And the reason I want to listen in here is because this could be a prelude of conversations and debates that we are going to see here in Florida in the coming weeks and months. We just heard a little bit ago from Governor DeSantis and the Attorney General talking about how they want basically a reapportionment kind of redone, and that would force a redraw of Florida's congressional districts. And we already know that the Speaker of the Florida House, Daniel Perez, has launched a select committee to start looking at redistricting. So this is just a little bit of a head start on some of the arguments that we will likely hear on the Florida House and Senate floors in Tallahassee. So let's go ahead and listen in as this debate continues in Austin, Texas, ahead of a final vote on that state's new congressional redistricting maps.
Briefly to the moment where we are in. The families across Texas are still rebuilding from disaster. They are asking why this is the first priority, why these maps are being fast-tracked, while their recovery and safety are pushed to the back. You know this is not right. The people you serve also know that. On the process, the map shaped behind closed doors, influenced by interest far from the communities on those pages, will not earn public trust. Trust is built upon open, with facts, and with the willingness to hear those who are affected the most, especially the community of color, who have carried so much of Texas growth and deserve a seat on the table, not the line through their neighborhood. Members, this vote will not close the book. The story of Texas is bigger than this map. In this story that brought me here, the American dream, and that every child, every senior, and every working family has a voice and have the choice who would represent them. We honor that promise when our district reflects the communities as they actually live, pray, learn, and work together. I ask you all to vote no on HB 4 to keep the faith with the people who have sent us here. Remember, Texans of every color and creed deserve a fair representation. I respectfully ask to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cracking and packing. Cracking and packing. It's the classic Texas Republican two-step when it comes to discriminating against Black, Hispanic, and other minority Texans. You crack and pack minority neighborhoods to dilute their voices and give outsized influence to Anglo communities, even though you know full well that Texans of color accounted for 95% of our state's population growth in the last decade. Your cracking and packing two-step is evident in many parts of the state in this map. I'm going to focus now just on my home county of Tarrant County. Tarrant County is a majority minority county of more than 2 million people. Tarrant County saw extensive growth in the last decade. All, I repeat, all because of people of color. In fact, Tarrant County's white population decreased in the last decade. But you wouldn't know that in looking at this discriminatory map. As you've already heard, this map fails to create a new Latino opportunity district in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. which is a tremendous failure because there should be one. But not only do we have that failure, this map cracks heavily black and Hispanic neighborhoods in Fort Worth out of Congressional District 33, the district they have been united in since 2012. So let me talk about how you've accomplished the cracking. Some of those neighborhoods are submerged into CD 25, which sprawls out more than 100 miles nearly to Abilene. Rural Anglo voters will now control the outcome of their congressional election, canceling their voices. The rest of those CD 33 precincts are splintered and used for parts in CD 12, once again controlled by Anglo voters in West Fort Worth and Parker counties. By the way, let me remind the House, if you've forgotten, how CD 33 came to be. In 2011, the legislature, in passing its congressional map that year, did the exact same thing that this map does. They took heavily minority neighborhoods in Tarrant County and submerged them into white-controlled districts, suburban and rural districts, until a federal court stepped in and called it what it was: intentional racial discrimination that is against the law. Now, if you've heard this before, and if you're on the House Redistricting Committee like I am, it's because Congressman Vesey explained this to you a couple of weeks ago in our hearing, but you ignored it. Now, this legislature is poised to defy that court ruling from 2011 and repeat the same discriminatory sin. So that's the cracking, or an example of it. Let's talk about the packing. So most of my majority-minority House District 101 will be packed into CD 30, a historic Dallas-based district where black voters have elected the candidate of their choice since that district's creation in 1991. In other words, you don't need to pack more minority voters into that district unless, of course, your goal is to cynically dilute their collective voting strength. But the intentional discrimination doesn't even stop there. As Congresswoman Crockett testified in the House committee hearing a few weeks ago, you've removed key economic engines from CD 30, like Love Field in downtown Dallas. Hell, you even took her home out of her district. She told you that, but you ignored her on that too, just like you ignored the thousands of Texans who voiced their strong opposition to this corrupt process. But you say, and I heard this in the committee, surely Congressional District 30 is going to have new economic engines with all that new territory in Tarrant County. Wrong. CD 30 in Tarrant County goes right up to the campus of UT Arlington, but the university goes into CD 6. CD 30 goes right up to the General Motors plant, but not quite. It also goes into CD 6. And the Arlington Entertainment District in CD 25. You know that's not a coincidence. You know what it is. It's straight up intentional discrimination. You can falsely claim it's about partisanship, but you know that's just a smokescreen for racial discrimination. We all see it. The people of Texas see it. And now the American people see it. Texas redistricting maps have been found to violate the Voting Rights Act every decade since the 1970s. I don't know why this legislature is so hell-bent on keeping that shameful streak going. But know this, we will see you back in court very soon.
Chair recognizes Mr. Bernal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is my 6th term, and when you've been here long enough, you get to know people. We often get to talk more personally, sometimes behind committee rooms or when it's late night during budget night, and those conversations are usually a little bit more personal. We talk in ways to each other that we don't talk here, and so I thought that the approach I would take, because so much has already been said that I agree with, that I would talk to you now the way I would talk to you then, with maybe a few fewer cuss words, of course. But I have to tell you, as your colleague, as your peer, it's frustrating when it seems like no matter what we say or what I say, you always seem to know better. That is frustrating. It is demeaning. And I'll give you an example of how often that's happened since I've been here. Some of you who have been here as long as I have may remember SB 4, which was the Show Me Your Papers bill, which allowed law enforcement to essentially racially profile people and say, you look like you don't belong, show me your papers, show me that you belong here. And we tried to tell you that that singled us out. We tried to tell you what that would look like on the ground, but you knew better. And then you've got the DEI bans that focus on clubs and departments that are designed to help and guarantee the success of students of color in particular. And we tried to tell you how that felt, what it meant, what you were doing, and even then, you seemed to know better. And then we go to the library book bans. When so many of those books were written by authors of color, and we tried to tell you, look at who the authors are, look what they're writing about. This is how it makes us feel. This is what you're doing. This is the effect. And even then, you seem to know better. Then we've got the 287G agreements, which turn local law enforcement into ICE agents. And look what's happening now. Our neighbors, our friends, our family are getting scooped off the street by masked, unidentified agents. And we tried to tell you, look what's going to happen. We are singled out. Look at how it makes us feel, and look at how it affects us. And even then, you seem to know better. And then, you didn't want Asian folks to own property. Very straightforward. And we said, you guys, look at what you're doing. Look at who you're pointing out. Look at how it makes people feel. And look at what's going to happen. And yet, even then,
debate continues on the floor of the Texas House of Representatives in the state's capital of Austin as they debate the redistricting maps that are expected to pass when that vote is taken at some point once debate concludes here later today. Again, reason we were listening in is because these are debates that will likely be coming to Florida in the coming weeks and months as well. We are going to take another quick break here on Fox 35 News Plus, but we still have more to come, so don't go anywhere. Keep it right here on Fox Local and on YouTube, and we'll be right back.
watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. A call about a dog stuck in a drain pipe in Flagler County turned into a fox rescue. That fox was actually trapped 30 feet under the ground. And so first responders worked with the technical rescue team to rescue the animal. It was a tricky rescue, but they got that fox out. It has been taken first to animal control for treatment. They figured out it had mange. They ended up sending it off to St. Augustine Wildlife Center for more care. Fox 35's Marie Edinger had the chance today to speak with Chief Stephen Cox of the Flagler Beach Fire Department about how they were able to rescue the animal.
So, we received a phone call in the evening on August 18th from a concerned citizen. And originally they thought it was a puppy that had wandered into a storm drain. And we had a couple of residents take a look, and, it was pretty far, down in there, about 30 feet, we can estimate, and dark. And, it appeared to be, a puppy. And we activated our TRT response just basically because it was in a confined space, and we wanted to make sure we were able to get this animal out safely. And our crews, they work real well together and work diligently overnight. And with the assistance from animal control, we finally got that animal out. And to our surprise, it was not a puppy. Indeed, it was a fox. So a little surprise for us, but we treat all animals the same, and we're excited for the outcome. So.
How did y'all realize it was a fox?
We really didn't until the end. We have some, specialized equipment that we utilize. We ended up cutting a couple holes into the culvert and, put a camera down there. But the camera is a thermal imaging camera, so we can get a good idea, but not real detailed. And we originally thought it looked kind of like a poodle, just because of the mud, and it had some matted up hair. But once the animal came out, the animal control's like, this is a fox. So yeah, surprise.
Yeah, that is a wild one. I can see you, or I can picture you guys like thinking like, oh, so cute, and you're like loving on it, and then you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, there was a moment where it was an awe of, yeah, that's not a puppy.
So I think back in the day, there used to be this view of like, oh yeah, firefighters saving cats from trees, right? And then nowadays I more think like animal control is who goes out for animal related calls. So for me, that is like a little bit interesting. Like, nope, firefighters are still the ones at least assisting or out there getting the calls about whatever animal stuck in whatever place.
Yeah, our jobs evolved over times. It started out, we were just fighting fires back in the day, and then we started running medical calls and hazmats, and now, today we're an all hazard fire department, and we answer the public's call. So, we have specialized equipment that, animal control that they don't have. So when we have these types of situations and we identify it, we're able to utilize this equipment like ventilation systems and, cameras and self-contained breathing apparatus, things that, the animal control, they don't have access to. So whenever we can be a benefit and assist in those types of ways and provide that response, we're going to make sure that we're doing that, especially to keep the community safe and their animals, whether it be a puppy or a fox or so.
Yeah, you and I had talked before about like realistically, you guys are in the life-saving business and you don't specify what type of life.
No. And I think, in today's day and age, people treat their animals as if they were their loved ones. And, we have to evolve with society and provide that type of service. And we're a true believer of that. And, for us here at the Flagler Beach Fire Department, we carry things such as pet oxygen masks for in the event we run into these types of situations where we encountered a loved one's pets, and we've utilized them with great success. So it's type of the evolution of the response that we're providing, and we're proud to do that. So
Yeah, that's wonderful. What happens now with the fox? So animal control took it?
they did. They're gonna, from what we've heard at this moment in time, they're gonna rehabilitate it and the plans are probably to release it back into the wilds.
Well, glad they were able to do that and rescue that fox, and brighter days ahead for that fox that has been rescued. Well, we appreciate you joining us today.